Good evening. Welcome to episode I lost count of Call in the iDebates Discord server and YouTube channel. I am the Raven. With me is Queen Esther and Dan for Logic. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good to hear. Tonight we will be discussing homelessness and disenfranchisement, specifically in America. Feel free to discuss it anywhere else in the world. How you two feeling about the topics? Hello?
Well, I feel like in my personal life, I've interacted with many people who are homeless and have a few strong opinion towards them.
Alright, Esther, have you ever had any personal experiences with homeless people?
Not necessarily, I wouldn't say personal, but I've seen a lot of homeless people in my life before.
Do you pass by them often anywhere, or?
Not really where I live, but I remember going to California and they were like flooding the streets pretty much. So, yeah, they were
Really?
like all over like Hollywood. And like pretty much everywhere we went, if we walked somewhere, there was probably some group of like people who presented themselves as like not having very much.
Uh, what about you, Dan? Where you're at, do you experience a lot of homeless people, or?
Yeah, I live in a really low income community, and uh, you should see them around. It's like when I was young, I used to use them to help buy cigarettes and alcohol and stuff.
Oh,
And in my place of work, it's a common destination for a lot of people who are rehabilitating from drug abuse, who spend most of their life being homeless and stuff, to go work at because of it's very entry level and high paying, and they don't discriminate based on stuff like that. So, and thanks to that, I became friends with a lot of people who were former homeless and stuff like that. So I have that kinds of interactions with them.
I get that. Where I'm at, it's not so much like Esther saying of California, where it's kind of like flooding the streets, but it's very common to see a lot of like panhandlers out here.
mm-hmm.
Um, it's very, very common to see them, walking the street sometimes. Um, when I do get back up in New York, often, of course, New York was infamous for its homeless problem. I always try to be kind, if like I'm going on a subway, I always try to like let one pass in with me for free, or if I see someone just struggling on the sidewalk, I always be sure to get them a meal or something if I can. A little acts of kindness. All right, let's start with some of our questions. Historically, many immigrant groups, racial minorities, and social pariahs, such as sex workers, drug addicts, have been victims of disenfranchisement and homelessness. Do you think society, and to an extent our government, singles out or manipulates any groups such as the ones named before or any others today? Or is it really more of a thing of the past to manipulate the vote of a certain populace?
Do you want to say something, Dan, or can I go?
You can go first.
Um, I don't think it's a thing of the past at all. I think it is constantly happening. I don't think it's ever stopped. I think that people who are in all of those groups, and even people who were just in unfortunate circumstances, like maybe they lost a lot in like a lawsuit and they just couldn't afford where they lived anymore, and they actually came from like relatively good circumstances to just like ending up homeless and having no real place to go or like family to stay with. um I think they are victims, but I think in terms of like specifically like outcasts of society, or like people who like engage in like counterculture, I think I don't think it's just the government. I think it's yeah, I would say it's a combination of the government and society sort of like taking advantage of them, because um I feel like those things like sex work and like drugs are like I don't want to get into like conspiracy theories, but like I know the CIA has worked with like drug addicts and like illegal guns to actually have them smuggled into the country for very negative reasons. So they are manipulated, and I think things are the way that they are for very specific and manipulative and corrupt reasons.
Causing the cocaine and crack
Yeah.
pandemics of the 80s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get into that, but it's totally true if you look it up. Dan, would you like to say something? Or
Yeah, it's like I think mainly is when it comes to the disenfranchisements of these pariah groups you mostly talk about. I think mostly they're victims of the justice systems, like sex
Mm-hmm.
workers is like they're victims of the criminalization of prostitution, and drug addicts. They get penalized for being drug addicts with the criminal justice system as well. It's like instead of getting the help they need, they be put into situations where it makes it harder to find a job, and they lose their homes and all that. So yeah, I think especially when it comes to the government, they seem to perpetuate the problems within these groups.
Mm-hmm.
all right. Unit would like to join us. I'm going to let him in.
Hi, unit. Any minute now.
Give him a second.
Oh, he has to like accept it. Okay.
He was already
There you
asking to
go.
come in. There we go. Welcome, Unit.
It wouldn't work for a sec.
Hey, good to see you, Unit.
Yeah, well, hey Dan, it's been a while. If you're talking specifically about disenfranchisement and its relationship to homelessness, groups in America, while a lot of the same stuff doesn't exactly go on today, its effects are still present, and there's been nothing done to remedy these effects. A good example: flooding of crack into the Black community by the CIA and the Nixon administration in order to weaken Nixon's political enemies. A good example is how the Black Panther Party was in California, especially while Reagan was governor. He deliberately and openly passed legislation like huge gun control laws in order to disarm and control the Black Panther Party. And the Black Panther Party was also famous for its mutual aid networks and its assistance of homelessness within the Black community. And this isn't something that's like unique to Black communities either. You can see it pretty much in every single community. Uh, Immigrant communities, for example, are
Mhm.
continuously abused, especially in the modern day, are continuously abused in southern states. Like you can see what went on in El Paso, like what goes on in El Paso today. You can see how many homeless people are there. Almost all of them are immigrants. They are people
And
who like a lot of illegals are kept as homeless people because they can't go anywhere and get anything done about it, right? Like they already are getting paid less than minimum wage for pretty much any job they do. Uh, and when they do these jobs, they are subject to horrible working conditions. Disabled people and mentally ill people and drug addicts are overwhelmingly homeless compared to the your normal population numbers. They're overwhelmingly homeless because there are no support systems for these people, and the support systems that are there are weak at best. Like disability, I mean, come on, there's a reason so many people with mental disabilities that force them not to be able to work end up going to places like OnlyFans, right? Like that was like the huge thing with the OnlyFans, right? What about all these disabled sex workers? Well, the issue is that there are no support systems for these disabled people. COVID has also wreaked havoc on our homelessness issue, especially here in
Mm-hmm.
LA, right? Like it was obviously pretty bad before COVID, but it's gotten so much worse. There's this
no, I
overpass.
agree with that.
There's this overpass near my house, near McDonald's, um, at one of the most dangerous intersections in my area. And every couple of weeks, the police will clear them out. About 2 days ago, they cleared them out, and within 6 hours, everybody was back.
What?
That's how bad the issue is. There were a while back, Echo Park, this like pretty famous park in the area, uh, had this huge police presence occur in it, and homeless people were forcefully removed and arrested and even tried with trespassing and other things like that. this sparked enormous protests that got pretty violently put down. Like they weren't like BLM and Antifa, like they weren't showing up, and so the media didn't really give two shits. Plus, the media putting light on this issue just sparks up public support for it. So there was nothing but local news talking about this. And these protests were put down pretty violently. No matter what happens, nothing is being done for homeless people. And I don't think it's going to be. Like in California, Newsom has handled homelessness pretty poorly. And now people are thinking Larry Elder, the fucking moron himself, is going to somehow do anything positive for it when all he wants to do is tear down these welfare systems and support systems, which are already way too weak to support this huge issue. Pretty much
That
all I have to say on the subject.
That's very depressing to learn about.
Yeah.
It is depressing. Absolutely
I
nothing is going to get done about it.
the one thing you said about how the cops being called to disperse the people underneath that overpass, it reminded me of something back last year when the market crash first took place right after lockdown. One thing I remember seeing that was just absolutely heartbreaking. It was a family along the side of a intersection, and you could tell they'd been out on the street for a few nights, kind of disheveled, raggedy, you know, mother, father, two kids. Kind of a depressing picture. The nuclear family now standing on the street begging for cans of food or money or anything they could get. And it was heartbreaking because I later found out that the cops were called on them for loitering because they were standing on a company's property where they were panhandling.
Yeah, it's the most fucked up thing. Have you ever seen the in West Hollywood, I think it is, which is like one of the gayest places, like gayest communities in America.
Yep.
There is this thing that makes me immeasurably angry. It's a rainbow painted underpass floor and has spikes on it.
Oh yeah.
Those
Oh my
spikes.
god.
It's painted. It's a rainbow painted anti-homelessness architecture. And
That's
every single time I see it, I want to drive a spike through the head of the person who came up with this idea.
one
That's
of
terrible.
one of the things that really got me. I think I can't remember if it was this year or last year. Reading an article about how they were removing the benches from the subway stations in New York, so they couldn't be used as sleeping spots.
Mhm.
It's all about property values, in my opinion.
It really
That's the
is.
thing here. Like, LA is in California is so fucked up with this issue because everybody, like, there's just not enough space to put these people, right? Like the shelters do exist, but they're not safe places all the time. They're only open at certain times of certain days, and there's simply
Yeah.
not enough of them. And you
And
can't
not to
build
mention,
anymore. You can't build anymore in the urban areas. You can't build anymore, and you can't build any in the suburban areas because that's where all the liberal Democratic voters, like the super liberal voters live, the ones who like won't um kill Jeff Bezos if they saw him in the street. Like,
not to mention, a lot of them are very what's the word? Not selective, but there are very few family welcoming homeless shelters. Like, say if you're a single parent and you have a kid, your kid can't necessarily come with you. But if you're a single father with a kid, your kid can't necessarily come with you to a shelter. If you're a family, you'd have to end up breaking up because many shelters won't take either both parents or both kids. It's really horrible situation our shelters currently.
Yeah.
fucked up
Um,
thing. Like, one of the most supremely fucked up things is the fact that, and this is going back on the cops dispersing homelessness. And there's two things. There's two really, really fucked up things. The cops that disperse the homeless, it's really fucked up that they're dispersing them because they're just dispersing them to keep people comfortable, right? Because people aren't comfortable around homeless people because
Yeah.
we all know why, right? Like, I've had some really bad experiences with them in general. Like,
Yep.
whenever I take a walk out at night, but like if I take a walk with my brother at night or by myself at night, I don't have my dog with me, who's very defensive. She's very defensive. If I don't have my dog, I'm carrying a knife. At least I'm carrying a knife every single time. I do not go out without it. Um,
I get that.
it's scary. And I don't even blame them because the vast majority are very mentally ill and very drug addicted, and the ones who aren't eventually become the other as well because it's a
Yeah.
huge negative feedback loop. Uh,
It's escapism.
like
Is what it is.
they have safety in numbers. It is really, really fucking dangerous to be a homeless person. It is terrifying. I've heard a million stories from people back from my own hometown where there was a huge homeless issue for a while, especially due to heroin being pretty present. Um, it's scary being a homeless person. You've got to sleep with a knife. You've got to sleep with either. If you're alone, you have to have a knife or something because someone will hurt you or steal from you or both. And when when you disperse them, you're not getting rid of the homeless people. You're forcing them to go other
Yeah.
places where they don't have these small established communities that keep each other safe from people who would want to hurt them, whether they be uh, sadistic bystanders, sadistic
Mhm.
passerbys,
Mhm.
or other homeless people who are trying to take from them. And on the reason they won't build them in the suburbs is because these people they're cool with paying the taxes to fund these homeless shelters, but they don't want them in their backyards. They don't want the homeless people anywhere near them. They don't want them in the
Yeah.
parks they're walking their kids. They don't want them near the stores they're drinking. They don't want them near the cafes they're drinking their coffee and eating their cake at. They don't want them anywhere within 10 miles of their home, of their little suburban utopia. They don't want them anywhere near them. They want them to not exist. They don't want the homeless problem to get better. They want homeless people not to exist
Yeah.
one way or the other.
A lot of it
Out of
is a
sight, out of mind.
convenience. Exactly. I say that mine. It's all to them. It's not that it's a homelessness problem. It's a homeless person problem. They don't see them as people that need help. They see them as no different than you would see a bunch of raccoons on your front lawn. It's something to get rid of, not
Mhm.
something to help.
And that's
Wormy
um
Bean would like to join us. I
I
am going to let him in.
I'm just
Esther,
gonna
continue your thought.
I just wanted to say one thing adding on to what Unit said. I think it's really interesting how like the public is probably like the safest place for like a homeless person to be at, like where they're surrounded by like other people, but like those are the places where like they don't want to be seen. Like of course they want to be around like police stations to make sure that they're safe, but it's those same people that they look to for help that are pushing away to put them in much unsafer places where they're not seen, where they're like way more vulnerable.
Yeah, well, all right. I'm gonna say some things. Unit might get very mad at me.
Oh no.
Should be fine.
Oh.
But now, well, for starters, what you're saying is, idea is saying that we that they see homelessness as a problem that they want to get rid of. But I don't understand why that would be a bad thing. Like, I'm not proposing that we get rid of homeless people per se, like forcibly removing them from society. But I mean, the estimates from the new jobs report that came out this week, I think, was that there are around at least 200,000, if not more, like jobs that are open that businesses can't find employees for. So unless excluding like disabled people and whatnot, there is little excuse for actually being homeless at this point in time. And I mean there are other issues, and I'm not
I
saying
mean,
that it's
Before you continue,
easy. I'm not no no. Can I finish, please?
sure.
I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that like, oh, just don't be homeless if you're homeless. But there are jobs and business owners are desperate enough to get around the obstacles of hiring a homeless person, and they will hire that homeless person because they need workers, and they know that that person is going to work harder than someone who's living in a nice house with a family and everything that they can just go back to.
Javi, I have a question. Would you rather a 14-year-old take your order, or would you rather a mentally ill and drug-addicted 35-year-old man who hasn't had a shower in 6 months and a haircut in 8 taking your order or cooking your burger at McDonald's?
They don't let 14-year-olds take your order for starters.
They do.
Secondly,
In LA,
no,
you're
they
allowed to
don't.
work as a minor.
Not at
You're actually
14.
yeah, 14. You have to get a work permit. But you can work
No,
very
the
from
child
very young age.
child labor laws. A lot of those things, those machines that they have at McDonald's, you're not allowed to use. You're not allowed to work in most places. Like
well, no, you're
legally
you're
speaking,
allowed to
if you
take.
if you get a permit, if you get a permit, you can work at 14, but most places won't hire you until you're 16. McDonald's doesn't hire you
They
until
do
16.
now
I don't
Okay,
think
for
you
because
the
of
can
that
for
sake
worker
of
those
shortage.
kind of
argument,
jobs
let's
get
just
away.
push it up to 16 years old.
Not okay,
Even at
and not
16, there are more
and
than enough people in
I
LA.
said for the record, I said excluding people who have like disabilities, and I would say a mental illness that is apparent would be considered disability. Like I can't give you maybe like an extreme depression or something like that, you know. But there are people who are genuinely just homeless because they don't work, not because they're
Mm.
disabled or something.
Well,
Have you ever?
can I say something really quick?
Go
My
ahead.
thing is like it's not just like as simple as like I want to be like on the streets and it's hard to find a job. I know there's lots of places that are hiring, but a lot of the times people judge you as soon as you walk into the door. And it's really, and also many job applications are I think I said this before in another discussion, but it like they ask for a home address and they ask for a phone number.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and that historically has been an issue for the
Hmm.
homeless community. But in the current time, employers are more desperate, and they'd be more willing to work something out.
Within
Perhaps.
like the last few
They,
months,
I
I get
actually
that.
only recently got a job due to this labor shortage, and I can guarantee they are at a far higher rate hiring children and other people. And once that unemployment support ends, which it will relatively soon, they're going to go back to hiring your normal college students and your part-timers and those
Well,
single
yeah,
moms working 3 jobs, you
and
know?
that's part of the issue. And I mean, there's no perfect solution. You can expand all these welfare programs and bankrupt the country. You can bankrupt the government and increase taxes monumentally to pay for it. But that's just going to create a whole other host of issues. There's no perfect answer. But I'm saying right now there is more of an opportunity for homeless people
How much money do you think it would take to solve the homeless crisis?
to solve the homeless crisis. You're
Yeah,
saying get every single homeless person a home and a job
90% of them,
and a stable living environment and
relatively.
help. That would take quite a lot.
How much?
I don't know. I can't estimate how much it would cost for I don't know the exact homeless population, but I can't estimate the cost for welfare for basically paying for because when people are homeless, they're homeless for a reason. They don't just one day like
Reasons.
for no reason be homeless. So
What reason?
you can give them a house and a home and maybe even a job, but there's a good chance that they go right back to where they were because whether it being they don't
What
want to
reason?
work or they're disabled in some way, shape, or form, maybe they're mentally ill. You can giving them a house and giving them a job isn't necessarily going to solve that, and giving them counseling is going to solve that, and they're still going to end up in the streets. A lot of them.
Well, I mean, that's actually kind of what the most comprehensive and successful European anti-homelessness programs are. But moving on, um, quick question: do you think people would rather live on the streets of LA without any kind of modern luxury, constantly being abused and having to, at best, be around people who are tweaking out of their fucking mind, extremely dangerous people, just to hide from the even more dangerous people because they don't want to get a job?
What? That's not even what I said.
You said
Uh,
one of the reasons is they don't want to work. Do you
There is
think people would
there
rather
is a
be
good
home?
population
Yeah,
of people who either don't want to work or they don't
prove it.
have the drive to work. Prove it. That
Prove it.
in order to be homeless, you have to be able to not only not get a job, but then continuously be able to not find a job. And especially now in an economy where all that you can find are people looking for people to work, and they're raising wages because there's no people willing to work. So they raise wages. There's more jobs open. And if you
They're
don't
not
right
raising
now,
wages.
if you're not working right now, it ultimately comes down to the decision. If you're an adult who's not working right now, at the end of the day, that's your decision.
I
They're
wouldn't
not
say
raising
that's really a
wages.
decision
Yeah,
That they're
making.
not raising wages.
They are
I,
raising
I, I,
wages.
thi-
Javi,
I,
do you know CC's Pizza?
No,
I think it was CC's. No,
It,
it wasn't CC's.
isn't.
It was Wendy's. I think it was. It was some fast food joint. Um, Started offering if you came in for an interview, they would give you free food. Like you could just eat there if you went in for the interview. This was a really predatory tactic. Do you want to know why?
Sure.
Unemployment support is predicated on the idea that you don't turn down any job. And so if you go in and they offer you a job, you can't turn that down. And if you turn it down, you lose unemployment support. If you take it, you lose unemployment support. They aren't raising wages. They're using predatory tactics, and they're hiring children. California has some of the most strict child labor laws in the nation, and yet still 14 or 15-year-olds, as long as they have decent grades, as in passing, can apply for a work permit easily. I did it myself. It's like it's a single piece of paperwork, the majority of which your school and your employer fills out. In fact, you don't even need to get the paperwork to get a job first. As long as you get it done within the first 30 days of being actually employed, you're fine. I know people who
Yeah,
work without permits and there's nothing done about it. Like no one cares. They
No,
aren't
no,
hiring. They
hold
aren't
on,
raising
hold on.
they
wages.
are raising wages.
All
Starbucks
right, hold on.
from 2016, Starbucks has
Hold
raised
on
their
one
wages
second,
by
Wormy.
15%.
Wormy.
Every major company that you see is raising their wages. Even companies anecdotally where I am, you see that they're continuously raising wages, they're offering bonuses to even go interview.
Wormy.
It's
Exactly. That's what I just said. The predatory
Lem
tactic.
Wormy.
how is it predatory
Hi.
to get
Hello.
somebody into the door and get them an interview so that they can
Hello,
get a job and
people.
get back on their feet?
just let him finish his point. Let him finish his point.
Okay, Evolving Snow wants to speak afterwards. Go ahead.
Wormy finish what you were saying, and then
I don't see how it's predatory to offer people a bonus to even consider working at your establishment and then getting them a job where they can once again have dignity of, hey, I work, I contribute, I carry my own weight. And not only are they going to have a job, when you have a job, a lot of the mental health issues that you see, people who work versus people who don't work have significantly better mental health. And there comes a host of mental health issues when you don't work, when you're unemployed. It's just a proven fact. And
Have you
you can
considered
you can say companies aren't raising their wages, but they just are. Bank of America has increased their wages by like from $15 to $28 an hour.
yeah, but is
Starbucks
Bank of
up
America gonna
15%
hire
from
homeless
all
people?
right,
2016.
isn't hiring homeless
all
people,
right.
dude?
You
I'm
just
not.
listed several jobs where they're all legitimately appearance based. And like yes, jobs are raising wages like a tiny bit, but something you're not like factoring in. Most places in America you need to make probably over $17 an hour to support yourself in a one bedroom apartment. Minimum.
It
You know
and
what
not
America's minimum, I mean not minimum, yeah, America's average minimum wage is like $8.
is eight
So
dollars.
you can
That
realistically
was
make
the
minimum wage
wages.
in almost
No,
all the
because in
states
this
and
climate,
still not even make a close
wages are
amount of
being
money.
raised to deal with the labor shortage,
To deal with inflation. They're
inflation,
being
Yeah,
and the
but
raised
labor
the
shortage.
being
minimum
No,
wage
raised
goes
because
up, but
minuscule
wages
everything
amounts.
alongside goes up
wages
too.
are
No,
being
wait,
Like
wait,
raised.
when you
Javi.
go to
Let's
I
try
can tell
China,
you
not
the
to
right.
talk
I
American
can.
over
minimum
I,
is
one
if
25.
you're
another.
saying that the wages aren't being raised, you're just lying because
If
they
you
are.
account for
Every
inflation,
single if you count for inflation that's caused by the government creating these programs that you support to try and quote unquote cure homelessness. And how's that going? Wait, inflation, the thing that you're
Wait,
complaining about.
what, what?
yes, because if
No, we
minimum
don't have.
wage goes up $1, every single thing goes up with it. So what extra money are
Exactly.
Americans
I'm not
magically
saying that the
having?
minimum wage, I'm saying that companies themselves are raising wages.
Wait. So what's your solution for homelessness? If it's not creating a more comprehensive support system that allows these people to get back on their feet, which works, it's
No,
evidence
what I'm
tested, it
saying
works. It's
is
seen
that
the organization.
there
What is your
is
solution?
no perfect solution to homelessness. I'm not saying
What
that I
is
have
yours
one.
though?
I don't have a perfect solution to
Well, I
homelessness. I
do.
think that no, you don't. You think you do. You think that if you just tax and tax and tax and spend more stuff in homelessness, it'll magically solve it.
Again, my methods are evidence proven. They're the most comprehensive
No, they're
social
not
support programs that you can.
because
Yes, they are.
you can point to things that go on in Europe, but Europe is not America. We can tell that. It's very clearly
Well,
not America. It's not the
Why
same system.
won't
It's
it
not
work?
the
Yeah,
Why
no,
same
won't
I know.
it work?
culture.
Why won't
So
it work?
why do you feel
Wait,
like
it
you
won't
can
work if
talk
it's a
about
different
American
culture?
homelessness if you
No,
don't
I'm
know like
saying
the reality of it?
that there are
All
completely
right,
different
we're
countries. They are
getting a
completely
little
different
over
issues.
talkative right now.
But wait. Javi, why
Wait,
won't it
you
work?
can't say that things that have work in one country will magically work in the other. Europe
Yeah,
and
of course not, because
America are
because
very
the
different.
material conditions
Europe
are
has
different.
a
But
very
listen,
large
The material.
United European
You're right.
Union.
We're more wealthy. You're right. We're more wealthy and more capable of doing these programs. You're correct. We also have a far
We also
larger
have
educated populace and not a lot of blue collar jobs that are being automated away. So you're right. You're right. We are very different. We're more capable.
that's just not even true because if you look at things like the incarceration rate, that's going to contribute to homelessness. And until we solve that, we can't perfectly solve homelessness by just spending more.
What do you think causes the incarceration rates?
Well, a multitude of issues between. Well, I heard you guys talking earlier about like drugs, and especially in the black community, the drug problems. That's a huge issue. And then a lot of that actually comes from the government, like you said, the CIA just flooding the black community with crack, and just issues like that. And I think I don't have a perfect solution. I don't pretend to have a perfect solution.
You don't have any solution. You said so
All,
yourself.
all I'm saying
Your solution is
is
to talk shit about homeless people and say they won't work.
that's not even true. But okay.
It's literally what you do.
No, your solution is to just spend us into
Right.
oblivion, and that will magically clear homelessness.
No, what
Anybody who
magically cures
claims no, no
homelessness
anybody who
is
has
vocational
anybody who
programs and
claims to
housing
be able to
programs.
abolish poverty.
All right. Thank you, Javi and Unit, for enthralling us for a solid 15 minutes on that.
Can I just add one thing?
Please.
What I learned from that conversation is basically like the intersectionality of homelessness. It's not just one issue. There are homeless people who don't want to work. There's homeless people who really want to work but can't. There's disabled homeless people. There's like, counterculture homeless people who like stay in a brothel or stay with like drug dealers because they have nowhere else to go. There's different ages. There's people with families. Like, there's no one perfect solution to homelessness because it's intertwined with so many other problems in the country. That's what
Yeah,
I'm just gonna put that
I
whole thing
completely
to
agree. I
the
think Yeah, I
side.
completely
I
agree. I think the main thing that we need in this conversation is to distinguish the different kinds of homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
From my observations, I've kind of been able to divide them into three categories. Those under financial hardship, that falls into the category that Rayan was talking about. The family is like couldn't afford rent, having low income, having debt, and all that, causing them to have to be on the streets temporarily. And from what I've seen, are tweakers, those who had drug issues and or involving criminal activities and stuff like that. And also, I've seen this kinds of people that a lot of people associate with all homeless people, which I would classify as hobos, which are people who they quite honestly would rather live that lifestyle than have to work in a very manually intense job, which I almost sympathize a little bit if I wasn't so accustomed to my cushy lifestyle.
Those
that
categories make
brings
sense.
me into my next topic. That Unit and Javi kind of covered. Been very little back and forth. Um, as we see with what's been going on, as we, with the wide diversification in homeless people, you have some people who are just families, you have some people who are full-on drug addicts, tweakers, and then you have some who are just unfortunately mentally unstable or ill, and they just can't support themselves. We see that homelessness can truly affect anybody. That being said, is there any specific grouping that either of you would say is, what's the word, most at risk for homelessness? Some would say the black community, some would say Hispanic immigrants, as we've touched upon, drug
Mm-hmm.
addicts, all that. In your opinions, do you think there's anybody who is more at risk than anyone else in the country?
I want to say minority communities mainly because I don't want to just say black people. I don't want to just say that, but I know that in cities where there's like high welfare, like what's the word? Like people reliant on welfare or people really reliant on unemployment. Um and I wanted to touch upon black communities specifically because there's a lot of measures to make sure that they remain reliant on the government, and having personal lives for themselves can be very, very difficult. You know, like single mothers, um, and like a lot of like minority women with children. I feel like they're higher. They're more likely to end up homeless.
What about you, Dan? Any thoughts on that? Who do you think is more at risk?
Yeah, I think it's mostly just groups that are stuck in the ultra low income division of our class. Is these are people that most likely not to have any kind of a social structure that can help support them when they're in low times, and they're most likely to live in a geographical area that doesn't have very much good economic prospects. It probably doesn't have entry level jobs and stuff like that. It's like I'm not too familiar with the urban environment, but I can easily imagine them having difficulties. You know, finding jobs. Is like even finding a job at a pizza place would be difficult and stuff. But I'm more familiar of being out in the uh, out in the backwoods is where this you have to have transportation to have any kind of job where there isn't much jobs because there isn't much of anything, and it can feel next to impossible to be able to move out of that kind of area and stuff, which is imagine similar to that. So that's why I mostly think that it's mostly just a class struggle with those of the lowest rung.
I could get that. You'd say it's more of a, like I said, class struggle. Not really any specified group. It's more just based on the general lower class, the lower ring of society being at potential risk. I didn't have a
Because
chance
it's
to welcome you. Sorry, go ahead.
yes, because I've seen people of all ages and races be there, so it has to be something else that's beyond race.
Okay. I didn't get a chance to welcome you on both before. Uh, welcome, Kasim and Evolving Snow. How are you two doing tonight?
Pretty
Wonderful.
good.
Pretty
Great
good.
discussion.
It's
All right, it's good to hear. Do you have any thoughts, Evolving, on who's more at risk for homelessness in American society?
Probably like I don't want to say the elderly, but people on the older side of things, like maybe 45 plus, because like most people who are young, it's like not that like even if like I don't want to say like disabled, but to an extent, even if you're young dealing with injury, it's a lot easier for like say a 25-year-old than a 45-year-old who's dealing with like whatever injury or disability they're dealing with to like physically get up, actually somehow make it to their shift, etc. I just think when you get to a certain point, obviously your body's not going to work the same, and it's going to be a lot harder, even doing simple things. And then in a world where like the youth group is kind of flooding jobs. If you take a healthy 25-year-old to a disabled 45-year-old, it's most companies the pick's going to be a no-brainer.
I never thought about it
Okay,
that way.
that makes sense. The sick and the elderly are a lot more at risk for, at the very least, uh, have less financial and job security. That's actually a very
Yeah.
good point.
If they haven't
Um,
already been in a job for like a really, really long time, it's probably really difficult.
but even
Like
then, it
certain
depends on the
friends.
job.
Yeah. Mhm.
Like, not every job is really that understanding. In some positions, you really are just a cog that can be replaced. So, um, Unit would like to come back in. Let's have fun with that. Welcome, Unit.
Hey, I just actually learned something. The
Okay.
Houston and San Diego both tried similar programs to try and fix homelessness, called Housing First, where they essentially um, give them like they essentially create community housing with no limit on how long you can stay, as long as you have as long as you're like sober, as long as you keep yourself sober and and you consistently talk to like a social worker you're assigned. You know, it's essentially what Houston and San Diego both did, but Houston kind of revamped their entire system, and San Diego only kind of tried to do it in sporadic one-shot bursts about it, and Houston reduced its homelessness rate by literally half. And growing up in Houston, homelessness there for a very long time, at least, was terrible. It's fucking awful. I mentioned it earlier. My hometown had a huge issue with drugs and homelessness and crime, specifically financial crime, like Grand Theft Auto and burglary. Right, like that's why my hometown is like a really dangerous place to live because we had a lot of drug dealers. We had a lot of people who were stealing things like cars. A lot of people who were breaking into houses, and overwhelmingly these people were homeless or they had like homeless employees, quote unquote employees, if they were like big drug dealers, right?
Oh
And
yeah, no, I'm familiar with what you're referring to.
and it's pretty interesting because it worked really, really well. And it was super cost effective because it essentially just used what we already had, this permanent or these temporary housing, because there was a bit limit on how long they could stay previously. And instead, you just revamp the entire system to be more forgiving, is the correct word. When applying compassion to the homelessness issue, it seems to work pretty fucking well.
Yeah, yeah, it really tends to when you actually treat when you tend to treat humans as humans. Um, things tend to work out very nicely for most parties involved. Unfortunately, that's still less than a lot of our government systems have to learn.
Sadly. But yeah,
Um,
it's a really
oh, sorry. Yeah.
interesting, just a really interesting way of organizing it, in my opinion.
Uh, I'll be honest. I would say that out of all people at risk for being put on the street, I would definitely say minority groups and the mentally ill are top of the line. I would say the mentally ill are a little bit more at risk, uh, just because even though our government is still pretty abhorrent in assisting some minority groups, we have historically one of the worst mental health handlings in the world here in America. Uh, I can't think of any major benefits that our mental health has compared to the world stage. Um, we're pretty far behind in most situations involving that
Yeah.
the prescription of mental health medicine, the treatments, therapy is still in today's society seen as a bit of a not so much taboo, but it's still not taken as seriously as it should.
This is gonna seem weird, but I think the movie, and I know well, less weird, more I guess maybe the word would be cringe or overdone, but Joker kind of represents it pretty well,
No,
right?
definitely.
Like not like how it feels to be batshit insane, more how society reacts to the mentally ill, right? Like you've got somebody who is obviously not well, with a mother who is not well. Both
Mm.
are poor to the point where he's having to work in a completely denigrating job and he is treated terribly day in, day out for this illness, simply for existing while being ill. And the beginning of the movie, the first thing that happens is he loses his medication and his social worker because the entire department is getting cuts
Mm-hmm.
to their budget because these programs, which tend to work all over the world, and even in the US, we see them working due to these individual cities taking matters into their own hands and doing it themselves. We see these programs working, and yet we don't do them because, well, I think we all know why.
That it's really a discussion I wanted to save for a future uh discussion, Colin, whatever this is. But it's an excellent point to touch upon. The whole thing that's been going on the last year, 2 years of defund the police and all that. It really too many people now. Too many people just look at the big, not even big. What's the word? They take it at surface level and just think that it's about taking money away from certain systems. And yes, it is to put into other important systems. Like you said, Unit, we see that a lot of these social work programs do wonders across the country and in other nations. Um, if we could just have slightly more funding into the mental health system, into social worker cases, into proper training and handling of certain issues, things would be, I wouldn't say great. They'd certainly be better what they are now, though. If instead of, constantly pushing and kicking the poor mentally ill homeless guy on the street, we had someone who was able to sit down with him and discuss what help he needs, maybe get him on some form of medication that he requires, things would definitely be a lot nicer for all involved. Anyone else have anything to say on that? No?
No, I don't
Esther?
think so.
All right. Here's one that I know Unit is going to be very interested in discussing.
Probably.
I really wanted Mr. Minority here for this, because he would have loved to be the opposing side of this.
Oh, it's gonna be rent controls, isn't it?
It's about rent specifically. It's about the rise of landlords in America. Um, I know I discussed about you, I think it was last week, about the BlackRock situation. That company that's buying up a lot of foreclosed properties and basically just turning them into all rentals. Um, is the rise of rental properties and landlords good for America? Is the inherent idea of someone being a landlord bad, controlling a not just like a single house, but an entire building or city block good? Is it bad? Is it a monopoly on people's living situations? Should there be more regulations and on rent control and size?
Mao Shuji Zhang Hu Lai Qingji Tudi. Chairman Mao will return to cleanse the land. That would be
I
my
was
big
like,
opinion
what the hell
on
is happening
Somehow I
right
knew
now?
this was coming.
that would be my big opinion on how we solve the issue with landlords. But I
Can you
know a
say
lot
it
of
one more
people really
time?
oppose
Can you say that one more time?
Repeat the Chinese, please.
I mean,
Mao
also
Shuji
translated,
Zhong Hu Lai Qingji Tudi.
which means
Now, Chairman Mao will return to cleanse the land.
okay. Carry on.
I don't know if you guys all know what Mao did to landlords.
No,
Do you?
Please,
I
please
don't.
enlighten us. Not all of us are very enthralled in communist China.
Mm, uh, 1 second. Let me find the
Thinking
name
about
for it.
he's considering if he's going to grace us with his knowledge of the CCP.
Well, do you know what the Type 56 was?
Didn't he like kill a bunch of the landlords?
Do you know what the Type 56 was?
None of us know what that is.
It was the Chinese copy of the SKS, which the license to which was given by the Russians. They used the Type 56 on a lot of them.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
They murdered a lot of landlords. Well, it wasn't murder because murder's illegal and it was legal then. But they killed a lot of landlords, like the Chinese communists. But then again, landlords in that period of China were considerably larger than they are now, making up more of something that resembled more of a nobility rather than an upper class / upper middle class that had a few properties, maybe one if they were lucky, big apartment building, maybe two that they managed. These were more like a noble class. If I remember correctly, a lot of these landlords came from the previous Qing Imperial Dynasty before the Democratic Revolution in the early 1900s.
Yeah. And let me guess what happens next. Utopia happened.
No, social credit score happens, but we skip a few steps, right?
Wonderful.
It's when I say social credit score happened, like I mean a few steps got skipped. Steps I personally wouldn't repeat.
Yeah, a few famines.
Ding was a whole thing.
But yeah,
So-
I have a lot of opinions that about renting and all that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like I think definitely home ownership should be it should be a goal that we all try to achieve, and it's definitely difficult in the modern days. But I feel like the main reason that we've been having these difficulties with is because of government regulation. Is they've been adding a lot of taxes inside the process. You have to get permits to do this. You're not allowed to construct a home that's this certain way in this certain neighborhood. Some places don't allow complexes, some places don't do this and all that. And this is the main thing attributed to high rents in places like Los Angeles, that they're not allowed to build complexes and high rises and all that. And
Wait, no, you shouldn't build high rises in Los Angeles. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
That's a fucking terrible idea. We live on a fault line, dude.
Yeah, building high
There's
rises
a
in Los
reason.
Angeles.
There's a reason we build horizontally. You can't build vertically on a fault line.
You would have to be suicidal
can't do
and
that.
possibly homicidal to do
A
that.
big one's coming, dude. A big one's coming. We don't know when, but it's coming.
hopefully sooner than later.
No,
But-
please don't.
Are you prepared for the next hurricane? Or I'm retarded. The next earthquake unit?
Am I prepared? The fuck
Are you
am I gonna
prepared?
do? The fuck am I gonna do?
What do you mean? What are you gonna do?
Dude,
That's exactly what I'm
earthquake
asking. What are
is-
you gonna do?
An earthquake is the earth randomly opening up to decide it wants me gone. I can't do anything about that.
That's what I'm saying. But you have to have a plan. Like, what are you gonna
17,
do?
I'm
What are you
17.
gonna
I
fucking
work
do?
at Subway. The fuck do you think I'm gonna do? Intervene? What?
Intervene.
Gonna
Sacrifice
grab
the
both halves of the
sandwiches.
earth, pull it back together.
No, but Dan, that's not
Walls
what's
become
Yep.
mile
So,
longs.
anyways,
Dan. That's
I
not
like
what's
to
causing the
finish.
huge rent issues in
And-
LA.
and all this causes a high barrier to entry. So then only the richest of us can afford to buy up these lands. And so the solution to all this will be to limit government involvement in property and let the free market choose how to allocate resources. Dan,
You've changed a lot.
Uh,
Anyways,
just
I
like
hope you're fucking with me right now, because that is not in line with what you normally say.
I would just
I've
like
learned
to-
a few things.
But the free market has done an absolutely fucking terrible job of regulating the LA housing market. There really hasn't been I just don't see how them saying, "Hey, buddy, you aren't allowed to build a 6, 7, 8-story building on a fault line, because when it comes crashing down, it's going to kill 20 people at least. And it will come crashing down because there will be an earthquake. Like, you see this everywhere. I mean, in second grade, I remember my teacher came around and, she had us build buildings with blocks, and then she shook the table, and every other retard kid was like trying to make it really tall, and then I made it really horizontal because I'm a genius, and I won. And that's a good example of why you aren't allowed to, because otherwise people will die and all those nice little block buildings will come crashing down. The free market would ignore this. Also, those housing regulations with how you're allowed to build your houses, they exist because otherwise huge companies would cheaply build terrible houses, sell them at market level, acting as if they were not terrible houses. And then what happens next? Oh, suddenly your pipes are fucked and you've got to pay $30,000 for a plumber to come around and literally replace all your pipes over the course of 2 weeks, during which you can't live in your home. Or they put asbestos in your home and give you cancer without you ever knowing. Like, these regulations exist for good reason. I don't know if you ever heard, like, there's an engineer saying every regulation is written, it's not written in ink, it's written in blood. For every single regulation, someone has to die, usually a lot of people. The issue causing the current LA housing crisis is a lot of things, right? It's no big thing, but it's largely a housing bubble caused by well, I don't want to be like average devolving socialist who doesn't, uh elaborate very much, but it's like capitalism, right? Like Raven mentioned it earlier, BlackRock. Um I don't think you guys heard about it, but me and him talked about it a while back. BlackRock is essentially this company that buys houses in urban areas for dirt, like they will pay above asking price, right? Like they will buy it above housing price.
Foreclosed properties a lot of time.
And yeah, and foreclosed properties. They will buy these properties for either and like, well, this is what BlackRock does. They buy foreclosed properties, but a lot, like Zillow, I think it is, like this big current thing. Like one of their, like a lot of the ads are, don't want to deal with the headache of selling your home, sell it to us. We'll buy above asking price. They buy these homes and they essentially create a monopoly on the housing market. Not only does this monopoly make the housing market unaccessible for people who are trying to become landlords, small scale landlords, as a form of retirement, right? Like hard assets that will like not really get devalued too hard, that in all likelihood you will be able to hold on to, that will always provide a source of stable income. And it's especially good for people like tradesmen or people who are business people, run like a small business or multiple small businesses. That way, once they retire and they're no longer receiving a lot of the income from these businesses, they can have a stable source of income from the properties they are renting. But BlackRock and Zillow and all these companies don't do this. They intentionally create the conditions of a housing bubble, because then these houses get extremely overvalued. You heard about Hasanabi, like the big Twitch streamer? He bought a $3 million house. Have you ever seen the house he bought for $3 million? In Houston, it wouldn't be worth anywhere near that, especially like suburban area. It wouldn't be worth anywhere near 3 million.
Um, I think the worst part is, to my knowledge, there's not even any regulation on that. Like, there's regulation on, actual business monopolies. To my knowledge, there's not really any regulation on property. Like, you could literally just own as much property as you can, I believe, within a certain area, and just rent it off. And there's not really any regulation on that.
But yeah, and specifically LA, one of the main regulations that create this housing shortage is rent controls of non-luxury housing. As since they control the amount you can pay for housing, a lot of people aren't incentivized to create more housing of that level. So a lot of people instead just build luxury housing that is not have to be under rent control. So this is why you have such high rents. All these places is so they can be classified as luxury housing and not be under the regulation. And one of the things that regulations inhibit is like during the Corona crisis, a lot of people had the bright idea of creating like shared homes, like sheds they converted into little homes for homeless people. But these things didn't meet the regulation of community of the city, so they were taken down and all that. Which these shed homes would be a lot better than living on the streets. But the city would not allow that. And in Mexico, this is where how we live in the poorest areas. We just have sticks set up with just tin roofs. And yeah, it's not ideal. There's certain steps people take to make sure it doesn't burn down and whatnot, because when it's your own property, it's in your own best interest to make sure it doesn't get burned down, even though if it's all made out of sticks. So if the government wasn't too interfere with all this, we would have more supply of affordable housing.
Um,
Like a reach.
I just wanted to read a few messages from the chat. Where was it? Oh, yeah, perfect one. Water Enthusiast says, Unit, if you aren't buff enough to fight an earthquake, don't talk to me. I just felt like that was
It's true.
important to throw in here. Unit, he's smart enough to defeat an earthquake, but he doesn't have the physical prowess.
Yeah, I'll
He's
just like
just-
look at my big ass brain.
He's just built different.
Earthquake. Have you ever heard of degrowth? It's like lectured about communism.
He's gonna debate the earthquake on Marx. So that's just
Earthquake is gonna
off
tell me to
topic.
read Mises, and I'm gonna call it a fucking nerd.
I want to go a little off topic. I don't. So like here on the East Coast, we have like plans if like a flood or a hurricane hits. Is there really like no plan for an earthquake?
There are plans, right? Like, for example, one of the plans is we don't build skyscrapers. We have like systems in place, obviously, to cause immediate relief, but you just can't do much about the earthquake itself, right? Like, there's just really not much you can do. If the earthquake decides to happen that day, it happens that day. You can't see it coming. You can't. Well, you can see it coming like an hour ahead, I think, at like the absolute best.
It's not like a hurricane where you have like days in advance or anything.
Yeah, right. Like you don't get to fill up your toilet with not your toilet. You don't get to fill up your bathtub and a bunch of bottles with water, right?
Yeah.
You don't get to. You can't just. You don't get to just do this. Like you, it just comes out of nowhere one
You're
day,
just driving
and
to
it
work
will,
and
it will destroy half your city, and you can't do anything about it. Except
then
you can mitigate damage by building the buildings the correct way. You can make sure relief. There's our systems in place to make sure relief can be rapid and comprehensive. And that's pretty much all you can do is you can mitigate damage and then repair as fast as possible and make sure the least amount of people die and the most amount of people are able to get back to normalcy as fast as possible. I can multitask.
that's
And also, people can choose not to live there. I don't know why would people want to live there.
Yeah, just
I don't know why
move.
people want to move to California anyway.
Oh, also, when the earthquake comes around, it's gonna be real bad for the homeless people. Also, Dan, people decide not to move because they like it here.
Well, I don't feel bad for them when the earthquake comes in.
There's
Well,
have
you're
Stockholm.
insane because, like, what would you have these people do? Like, have you ever heard? Have you seen what West Hollywood is? It's one of the most accepting places on the planet. Like, if you're gay and you want to move to West Hollywood, that's a great fucking idea, right?
Just don't be
That's
homeless.
Yeah, just
Like,
be homeless.
where would you rather have them move? Wyoming?
Just don't be
Like,
homeless.
you want to see what happens to gay people in Wyoming?
I think
Well,
anything in
Wyoming
Austin,
is
Texas,
okay.
they're accepting.
Nothing happens in Wyoming. I would say, like, I don't know, Virginia or something like that, right? Like,
What happens to gay people in Wyoming? They just kind of exist in the soulless void that is Wyoming.
100,000 people, man. Anyways, people congregate in the cities for just naturally and for good reasons. Like saying "lol, just move." Firstly, that isn't necessarily
Lol,
financially viable.
just move. Scream
It isn't
it.
necessarily financially viable for a lot of people. Like
Just like
moving requires
stop being
capital.
poor.
Moving requires capital. Like it
Just like
requires
stop
significant
being poor,
capital to be
unit.
able to move.
Stop being poor.
For the viewers out there, we're saying this ironically.
Yeah. I didn't know that was obvious. I'm
Just
glad
had to
you had
make
to. I'm going to
sure.
say
But
you're
we have
Raven
had
going.
members of the
"Lol,
server
just
who are
stop
like,
poor."
just stop. Like, just
We
stop.
do
Like, how do you
genuinely
need
have
homeless?
people.
Just get out.
Libertarians.
Everyone has one.
Unit, have you considered just like stop being poor and moving away from the ghetto culture just like that?
It's ghetto culture. Let's wait. Okay, we don't need to. This is going on YouTube. We don't need to fill it with a bunch of
Yeah, we
stupid
don't need
insult
it.
jokes. It's gonna get.
That was
To
old.
be fair, hey, if they want to get the joke, they can just go watch the gay menace conservative girl debate.
Yes.
Yeah,
Debate,
watch the
debate
Gay
on
Menace
poverty.
conservative girl debate, and you'll know exactly what we're referring to.
It's a lot of fun.
That brings me to another topic. It's not on my list, but it's something worth bringing up. How does natural disasters affect not just people who are already homeless. In this day and age, increasing climate awareness and ever increasing natural disasters. How does that affect the homeless population?
Poorly.
Not just those who are homeless, but creating more homeless people.
Poorly.
The great
Very, very
increase.
poorly.
Think about all the people living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah,
Just look
What are they
at
going to
look at
do
what
if their
happened
whole house
post-Katrina.
collapse?
yeah, exactly.
Look at Katrina. Just look at what happened in Louisiana after Katrina.
To hell,
That's all you
forget
need to know.
Katrina. Forget Katrina. Look at this past one. Look at Ida.
Yeah, look at Ida. It's gonna get way worse with Ida. It's obvious. You
already
can
been pretty
tell
bad.
already that it's getting worse with Ida already, and recovery is just starting. Like we're just starting to Ida's just starting to have been gone, and now the after effects are coming.
It's not just Louisiana. I live, right on the New York-New Jersey border.
Yeah,
It's
New York.
bad in New York. Like all of Newark, New Jersey, was pretty much underwater, and Newark isn't known for being, a prosperous city. It is a very well known for having a large homeless population and disenfranchised population, and to have your entire neighborhood just go underwater like that, I can't even begin to imagine the loss.
So another thing. Oh my bad.
No, go ahead.
Another thing too, I think it's going to create more homeless like scenarios is because especially in New York, think about all the illegal apartments such as like in basements that like a lot of those resulted, not a lot because I don't think there are a lot of casualties, but like there are actually like a few deaths specifically from like illegal apartments. I think that's definitely going to be more checked up on now. Cuz like you can't just sublet your basement to anybody or start renting your basement because you want to make extra cash. Like I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be like rules and regulations in place before you just say, yeah, you can come live in my basement.
which is good because that protects renters. Let's not forget, like,
Yeah,
there are a lot of landlords which don't really give a shit about their renters. My building, for example, had this huge string of thefts in our storage units in our garage, and when like it wasn't just minor stuff. Tons of designer clothes, car parts, a lot of shit got stolen. Um, these regulations to protect workers are a good thing. When this shit got stolen, we went to our landlord. My family didn't personally get affected, but a lot of people went to the landlord, who never responds to anything, by the way, and asked what can be done. And she said, "Oh, the security cameras don't work."
What?
Yeah, security cameras don't work.
How
They're down there to make us
useless.
feel better.
That's amazing.
That's terrible.
That's
What?
wonderful.
What that just happens in low income neighborhoods. I lived out in the middle of nowhere in a mobile home, and I still got robbed when I was in there.
Yeah, and there should be regulations to protect renters in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Like landlords are sometimes cool.
Sometimes.
But the vast majority of the time, in my experience, landlords are at best neutral. At best, they have their ups and their downs. Maintenance can be quick, but they're always going to find some way to keep your deposit.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I was actually watching a TikTok earlier of a guy's security deposit got taken. And so he was like, you know what? Since they're taking my security deposit, I'm pretty sure he like deinstalled the wall, like took out the whole door frame, took out the like destroyed the wall, everything. I thought
That's
that
awesome.
was pretty crazy.
It was a while back. I was reading a thread on Twitter about people just basically shit talking all their crappy landlord experiences. There's one guy. All he wanted to do was repaint the trim on his kitchen cabinet. He got explicit written permission from his landlord to do it. And when he eventually moved out, she went and cited that as a reason for keeping his deposit, even though he had permission from her to do it.
Getting back to the point of the how it affects how homelessness and climate disasters affect each other. If somebody is willing to answer, specifically anybody of the libertarian variety, maybe Javi will come back.
Oof.
I would like to know.
I said oof.
I would like to know how exactly does any like how exactly do the free market types plan to combat this stuff? Because climate change is obvious. It's obvious and it's inevitable. I have never heard a genuine argument against climate change, increasing natural disasters, and rising sea levels. Even even if it were natural, which it's not, there are obviously cycles. But if you look at how fast these cycles are, you can see that ever since we started emitting large amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, we have gone up exponentially fast in terms of the Earth's temperature.
Oh, so he wants a libertarian's response to climate change.
I want the libertarian response to the question. How are you going to protect these homeowners? How are you going to stop there being a mass dysphoria, a mass exodus from states like Florida, which are already really low in elevation and already have lots of marshes and hurricanes that hit them? How about when the entire state goes underwater and all that's left is a fucking archipelago? How are you guys, like, and I'm not saying you as in like you, but like, how are libertarians going to address this? How are they going to help these people? Is the government going to compensate them?
I want you to come back next week with that one because next week I was planning on discussing environmental issues, and that'll be great for that.
Yeah.
Also because I don't think we have anyone here right now that can really combat on that.
Dan seems to like
I'm
the
a
free market,
libertarian.
actually. All right, Dan, answer the question then.
Hold on. Would you two? Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead, answer it now.
Well, I think the information is out there that all this is going to happen to Florida and whatnot, and they have the choice to start evacuating immediately to lands that don't have it. Like me and my family made the choice that we were having tons of tornado troubles in Alabama, so we
So they
decided to
should
move up
just abandon
somewhere
their
without
homes?
tornadoes.
So they should
Yeah,
just
that's
abandon their
the
homes?
yeah. They should start doing this, taking actions right now to try to avoid it.
What if,
So
firstly, it's unnecessary. This doesn't have to happen, right? Secondly, like, they're going to be poor. They're going to be homeless. My point is, they're going to be. This is how this relates to homelessness. They're going to be homeless when they get there. They don't have the capital resources to just straight up fucking move. They've already bought or constructed their homes. What is your solution for these houses? They going to sell them? Tell them to who? Aquaman?
yeah, like I said, if your goal is to help these people, then there could be a nonprofit that can help them when this stuff comes. But for me personally, I don't want none of my money allocated towards helping these people. They
Why?
had the choice, and they knew very well the risk in their life's choices. And I've made choices in my life to escape these natural disasters. So I moved more up north. And I don't want them to take half of my money because they were too stupid to make that choice.
If I could just add in on that, I feel like this last year, your choice of being where you are haven't really mattered too much. I mean, in the Southwest, we've had people who lived around a whole lake, and now their entire lake bed is dried up. In the Northeast, we've had people who have had extremely insane heat waves that aren't natural for that areas. And even in the Southeast, the hurricane season has been unprecedentedly insane more than it has been any recent year. I feel like at this point, it's not really a matter of where you are. It's like anywhere you go, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, like, what, you want to move? Come on, move to California. Oh, what? There's increasing desertification. The ocean is becoming the ocean lifeblood of LA and the coastal cities, by the way, is slowly dying. I mean, you can just look at coral populations, coral bleaching, that whole event. Um, you can't move to the north of California. You'll get wildfires. Same thing goes on in all of Cascadia. Are you gonna move to the hurricane belt? Good fucking luck. That entire area is going to get continuously battered more and more, and entire cities are going to drown.
Yeah,
You want
it's
to move to the
not
north?
really. So
I
good.
mean,
Hey, here,
you think
here in Kentucky, we just
the
fine.
Dust Bowl is gonna come back, dude? We got rid of the Dust Bowl. We did that. It's gonna come back. Tornado Valley is gonna come back. And it's gonna be far, far worse. You moving up north isn't gonna do any good for you because guess what? All that water going into the atmosphere from the increasing temperatures and the evaporation, when it gets up there, it's going to get cold. It's going to get really, 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 really fucking cold. And it's going to come down on your house and bury you in 16 feet of snow. And you're not going to do anything about it except freeze to death.
Not even just talking about the
I
weather.
think there's
I'm talking about like
You know what the great thing
things
about
like
all this is? This what you didn't choose this. The people in Florida didn't choose this. The people in Redding, California didn't choose this. The people in San Diego didn't choose this. The people in New York didn't choose this. The people in Houston didn't choose this. The people all over Central America that are getting currently experiencing climate change fueled famines, none of them chose this. The people who chose this are people like the Koch Foundation and the PragerU brothers. The Prager
I agree with you.
corporations are the ones doing this. It's their fucking fault. These people didn't choose to experience these horrible natural disasters. They chose to move to Florida, right? And they knew that was going to come with hurricanes. All right, build your homes to have hurricanes, to handle hurricanes. Perhaps build them on stilts. You know, that's what a lot of people do for hurricanes. A lot of homes in Florida are built on stilts. All right, but what about when these hurricanes get worse and worse and worse, and Florida's economy gets worse and worse and worse, and fishing dies, and people are starting to starve, and climate famines are happening all over the globe, all because of some corporations. People didn't choose this. They might have chosen to elect people to tax them, but then again, that kind of goes up against your whole libertarian line of thought. Just let the corporations do whatever the fuck they want to the American, but not even the American people, to every person, because this affects everybody. It's not just an American thing, by the way. Just let them do whatever the hell they want to whoever the hell they want, because
Yeah, that's
we
corporatism
don't.
given
No,
special
no, no.
abilities to
That's not
corporations.
corporatism.
The
That's not
libertarian
corporatism. That's
libertarianism
corporatocracy.
as having what?
What does
What?
libertarian thought do against what does libertarian thought do against corporations? I
Uh,
know, like the whole non-aggression principle, and we love small businesses. Great, get it. You love small businesses. How are you going to protect them though?
yeah, these mega corporations will never be possible without the help of government aid and government
They
regulation.
will actually. That's like the whole thing, right? Like Standard Oil and U.S. Steel
Like,
came from self-made men actually. Um, and like the government does a lot to stop them. I mean, the government is the one who broke up Standard Oil into 34 constituent companies.
wait, what was wrong with Standard Oil?
It was a giant mega corporation that was stifling other smaller businesses. Unless you like
Well,
mega corporations now.
compared to modern day, they weren't really that big.
They
They just have a
literally
major
had
hold
the
on the
entirety
market.
of the U.S. oil market under supply, under their control. They were fucking enormous. U.S. Steel
Exactly.
controlled almost all
Just in the
steel
U.S.
manufacturing in the nation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
modern
the
day Exxon
U.S.
and BP control more
Yeah,
in
and
the
that's
current
bad,
day.
and we should break them up using the government. What does libertarian what would a libertarian government do about this? What would they do about it?
Well, let me tell you a few things about Standard Oil. It's like they
Do
earned their
about it?
way to their positions. It's
What
like
would they?
they
Oh, so mega corporations are fine now.
no, I'm saying that your idea of Standard
Standard Oil was
Oil as being
documented as
evil.
using aggressive pricing tactics to get to their position. They would
Yeah,
use huge
undercutting.
capital reserves to undercut the price of a good, specifically oil or rubber, petroleum or hoses or any of the millions of things they manufactured. They would use aggressive pricing tactics to completely and their huge capital reserves to completely push out small businesses, buy them up, and then reset prices to the same or higher than they previously were in that area. They weren't doing something altruistic. They weren't doing
No,
something that ended up
the
having a
prices
good
never went
effect.
back
They
up.
were doing something that
Prices
destroyed.
stayed down.
The price didn't stay down. This is
They
documented.
did.
That's what literally prompted the Supreme Court case to break up Standard Oil into 34 constituent companies. Targeted
What
Standard
prompted
Oil, New
them is
Jersey.
because the companies he was taking over were connected to the government. They didn't want to be fall under their rule as well.
They weren't
The,
connected to the government. The government. Well,
Standard Oil was a
They were
capitalist
connected to the government. They were connected
nightmare.
to the government because the government connected a giant fucking sword called breakup. You know, like what was it called? Antitrust. Yeah, trust busting laws. A giant fucking sword or stick named trust busting laws. And they connected it to its fucking skull. That's what they connected to the government with.
I would love for this to be brought up again next
What do you?
week.
Okay, but can I get Dan to give me one specific answer? I don't want to know more about Standard Oil. I don't want to know more about U.S. Steel. I want your answer. What are you gonna do about it? If you became president of the United States tomorrow and you had a House and Senate majority, what were you gonna do about it?
Do about the aftermath of the climate change.
No, how are you gonna stop it?
Stop climate change?
How are you going to stop it?
Isn't
Uh,
that kind of a
what's it called?
ridiculous and misleading question?
No, we can stop
Yes.
it. We have a few years, and it wouldn't even require that much spending, relatively, like a couple $100 billion, really, to completely turn things around. We can halt it now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we need the spending. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar that there's any solution to the climate change.
That's why.
Scientists have
I'm
been
Look,
curious to
saying
see
there's a
what you have.
solution for the past 20
Look.
years, and all they've been called is
Listen,
alarmists,
listen,
and every single one of the
listen.
predictions have come true.
I would love for this to be continued next week because that's what next week's topic is going to be. It's going to be about environmentalism and climate change specifically. Dan and Unit, if you would both be available this
Love to.
upcoming Saturday, that would be great.
Love to.
Oh, sweet.
All right. I believe that's it for tonight. Rather short than what we've been doing. We haven't gone on the 3-hour mark like we normally have been.
That's true.
Esther, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi.
All right. That's hello. I would like to say thank everybody that joined in tonight on this discussion. Dan, thank you. Unit, of
Happy
course,
to be
thank
here.
you. Thank
Wait,
Javi.
wait, I just want to say one thing because Dan is most
No,
certainly no. Dan is most certainly an OG
you're a
member.
woman.
He's
No.
one of the people to be like the longest members in the server. And I just want to say I'm really, really glad to see him again. And I'm glad that he
Yep.
like wants to come back. So shout out to you, Dan.
We are
I just wanted to
very
make that
happy to
clear.
have you back, Dan.
I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Okay, carry
All
on
right.
pretending. Sorry.
This has been call in. I don't know what number.
27.
27, Jesus.
Well, this is our 27th iDebates recording.
Oh, okay.
Technically 35th, but we're not gonna get into that.
Yeah, the uploads that have been
Thank you for
deleted.
listening. Thank you, anyone, for listening. Please subscribe to the iDebates YouTube channel to get more of this lovely content. And feel free to join the iDebates Discord server where you can participate in these discussions as well as numerous text-based debates daily. I am the Raven. That is Queen Esther. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.